for it to.
All right, saying we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason Davenport. This is my first YouTube live attempt, and I am very lucky to have my first guest on a series that I'm calling 7 Qs of the Davenews, where I ask a friend 7 questions about what they do and what they're involved in, what they're excited about. And I have my first ever guest of 7 Qs, my good friend of about 15 years, R Jason Rawlings. Tell him hello.
Hey, what's up? Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Mr. Rawlings and I are both sort of united in a mutual love of cinema and film. I remember the first time we chatted it up, I casually mentioned a Fellini film at the pool at our apartment complex, and he asked me what my thoughts on 8.5 were, and we got to chatting, and we've been buddies ever since. We've actually collaborated. We've got a dog going on.
We got a dog and a child. Hey, can you go there with your mom?
All good.
Sorry. Hold on 1 second. Sorry.
The dangers of going live.
I have a little bit of trouble.
Okay, I'm gonna play with.
It's all right. I'm going to pull up the 7 questions that I'm going to ask Mr. Rawlings here. He is both a child father and a dog father, so he's got a lot going on there at the house. Don't know if anybody is watching. If you are, send a hello in the chat and tell us where you're watching from. It's okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. No problem at all, man.
Children and dogs.
It's all good.
What were you saying?
No problem. I mean, I was just telling him that you were both a dog father and a kid father, and yeah, a lot of responsibilities going on. But let's and speaking of responsibilities, I don't want to keep you from those for too long, so let's get down to these 7 Qs. And chronologically, think back as to any event that sort of inspired you, made an impression upon you. What got you thinking about the idea of making films, and what were your first steps into that genre of art?
Yeah, I feel like filmmakers of a certain age, in particular, when I was coming of age, Blockbuster was still a thing, or the video store was still a thing. And coupled with the fact that my dad one day brought home a Magnavox VHS camcorder, I came by it honestly. I remember if he wasn't using it for filming events or birthday parties or family vacations, I was using it, playing with it, figuring it out. I remember using it and like discovering editing, like actually editing within the camera and like seeing how that worked and thinking like I invented editing, because I was like, hey, if you stop it here and start it here, then it tells a story. So
what did you edit with at first? What was your first editing software?
So I didn't have editing software then. So what I used was, can you hold on just a second?
It's okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Do what you got to do. That sounds serious. Ladies, if you're out there, I'm single. None of that going on at my place. So, keep me in mind. I hope there's audio and visual. We did test recordings before the live broadcast began, and everything on my end was audible. I am hoping that on the live broadcast we're getting the same. And visual. Sounds so. Sounds like it. I just checked out the window and there was a little bit of audio going on. That's cool.
Back for good. For good.
Awesome. So you didn't have any editing software at first.
So back then we were literally editing within the camera. So you would like frame a shot, say go, tell your friend to stop, immediately move the camera, start again, tell your friends say go, and so that's how you had to do it then. You could also do it with two VCR recorders playing one into the other, but really it was just kind of editing while in camera. So that's kind of how I did it then.
So video was your first medium, like we were still in the age of video cassettes.
Correct.
Word.
And then, but I think the first actual software I didn't actually use till college, till U of M, and that was like Final Cut, I believe.
Have you ever messed? I'm so guilty of doing more than 7 questions.
It's fine.
Have you messed with film proper, like actual tangible, like 8mm?
So
film?
I studied film at the University of Memphis, and when I studied it, you still had to shoot films, or your first few films, on actual 16mm film.
Okay.
So I have like physically edited with film on a little Steinbeck, rolling the film, physically cutting the film, taping it together. Yeah.
Nice.
It's pretty cool. They don't do that anymore, I'm certain, but it's pretty cool to be kind of the last generation where like film was a medium you could actually physically touch. So.
And it's more expensive to use tangible film. Is that true?
Yeah, prohibitively more expensive. I mean, digital media is infinitesimally cheaper than actually shooting on film. Back when I started U of M, we weren't fully digital. We had mini DV, so you still had tape, but it was digital tape that could be transferred onto the computer.
Okay.
But even still, that was might expensive than now, where you can shoot for hours now for little to nothing.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about dilapidation. Like there's so much efforts in film preservation and restoration just because of the decay over time. You don't really have to worry about that with
right. Yeah, it holds up. I mean, you shoot in 4K now, and it will look as pristine 100 years from now as it does today. But if you go back and look at some films that haven't been held up to that standard, they've gone away.
I'll be honest. I'm a 1080p guy. I like that. I like that resolution. It meets everything that I enjoy visually, and I think when you get beyond that, it starts to look, I don't know, just weird or alien.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I mean, there is I think it's who's the guy who did Lord of the Rings, doing that 48 frames a second. It does look kind of otherworldly and uncanny. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, we're not talking about Peter Jackson. We're talking about whoever is.
No, we're talking about Peter Jackson.
Okay, yeah. I guess that was his executive decision on that.
Hold on one second. I was on the phone.
Hey, Wiley. Are you gonna have? Is he gonna join us for tacos tonight?
He's joining us for tacos tonight. Yeah.
Did I make him cry?
Huh? No, we just got a new Switch game, and he needs help getting to the next level. So.
Oh well.
It's all good.
Patience is a virtue. We'll get you there to help him as soon as possible. Let's move on to question 2. What is your creative process? That's sort of a vague question, and when you're just getting started. Now, actually, I've been witness to your nascent stages of the creative process, so I guess I've seen this a little bit. But break it down for us. Like, what happens when you get an idea in your head? Where does it? What are the seeds to your creative ideas, and how do you flesh them out?
I'd say the biggest thing that kind of drives me, and I like to let do the heavy lifting, is like a place or location. I have this kind of mantra, like this must be the place where I would see a location. I would think, oh, this would be a great place for a story. Some of my earliest films would be interesting places to shoot, and then fabricate a story around that. We've done a film, Downer, set in our apartment complex, a very interesting place, and the story kind of came out of that place. I did a story called Ferris, set in a trailer park, or I've done a couple of stories now set in trailer parks, and something about that place and having that story or building stories kind of around that location, because the location can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, actually.
Okay. What have you noticed, any recurring ingredients in locations that sort of create a spark?
Yeah, I mean, unlike a set where you have to build and kind of like bring things in. There's some verisimilitude to having the people who live in a location or the sounds that naturally occur in a location, the architecture, something about that just I think makes the story feel realer and people kind of connect with it more in a way. And honestly, it's just easier for me to
Yeah.
not start with a blank slate. It's easier to drop characters into a place, or maybe people who actually live. I've done stories where I've just taken people's lives and it's like tweaked a little bit, and there's a story, and it's kind of a cheating maybe, but it's kind of a way to make a story.
I mean, do people who make documentaries, are they cheating? Like you
Right, right.
said, verisimilitude. It's an artist's relationship with truth, and I think ultimately it is the element of truth in art that is important to the artist, and is also what resonates with the consumer of the art. So, a close
Yeah,
relationship with authenticity and truth, I would not say is a bad or
yeah,
dastardly thing.
yeah, definitely.
I dig it. All right, so visual cues, authentic venues. Question 3. Tell us about what you're working on these days, and what are some challenges that you are encountering along the way.
That's an easy one. No, so I'm working on right now. I'm working on a couple things. I'm working on a documentary about pickers, and pickers are individuals who's kind of by trade they go out into the world and find things thrown out, or thrifting as people call it, and resell those things or touch them up and resell them. So I'm actually covering two individuals who there's this local picker named Aaron James, who's a fascinating character. I've done some interviews with, and there's another gentleman who owns kind of a huge kind of thrift warehouse, and they're these two kind of figures who are uh, uh, different, very different backgrounds. But they both are great raconteurs, and they both are very similar, very different guys, and great like
Very
storytellers in
different
their own.
places in life, right?
Yeah,
One
yeah.
guy is sort of a seasoned vet, and the other guy's sort of new to the game, or am I
Yeah,
correct?
relatively new, and the other's an immigrant. So even like coming with that, coming
New
to the
kid on the
states,
block.
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of fascinating. So I'm working on a documentary about these two guys, and then I'm working on a short film that I hope to shoot soon, called Thrift, about a picker, and just the day in the life of a picker and kind of a newbie. And so that's where my focus is now. And doing research for the short film actually inspired me to do the short, or maybe vice versa. I don't remember. I don't remember anymore. But the subject is so fascinating to me.
It's a
Yeah,
pretty there's a lot of appeal to that, I would imagine. I haven't personally explored it a whole lot, but I know just a couple of days ago on my Tinder profile, it was like, let's ask you a couple of questions. And they asked like 5 or 6 questions about taste and preferences, and like the second question was like, what do you think about thrifting? And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I don't think about it's not anything particularly significant to me, but there's obviously, I mean, there's a bunch of shows about like Pawn Stars and American Pickers, and
yeah.
it seems to have a lot of appeal. If you could tap into that audience pool, some people might really take an interest in the project.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely. I mean, I actually have never really watched those shows, but I know there is a huge interest in it. It's something. It feels very American too. This idea of maybe not actually. Maybe Americans. Well, it exists because Americans throw things out and then
Oh yeah,
resell those.
but then
Um,
the rest of the world is so much older, so it seems like the kind of stuff that you might run up on in the event of a culture that's 1,000 plus years old. It seems
yeah,
like you could even strike even something more exciting, or at least older than what
yeah,
we
that's
got.
true. That's true. But it's definitely a subject I'm interested in, particularly in Memphis. I feel like there's also this clash. The way Memphis is designed, there's like people of more means pushed up against people of less means, and like thrifting also is affected by that.
Sure.
People with more getting rid of it and getting
Yeah.
these nice or different things. So it's a huge subject. It's a lot bigger subject than I think when I was tackling it before, to kind of cover it with honesty.
And yeah, right next to one another, you have the unique viewpoints of one man's trash is another man's treasure. Your next door neighbor could be discarding something that you see as of great value, or maybe they don't. Maybe they are at fault because they don't see the value of it. But it can mean a lot to you.
Definitely. I was told a little anecdote about how Aaron, when he was a young boy, he got into thrifting because he walked outside and his neighbor had thrown away something that was, I don't even remember what the item was, but it was something that he saw value, and that's when he learned that there were people rich enough to throw things away. Like it hadn't occurred to him, because a lot of people, it's like, we got to hang on to this because ain't no more coming.
I've heard that is a characteristic of people who were influenced, or vestiges of the Great Depression. Was two things I've heard: is you don't throw stuff away because you don't know when you're going to need it again, and you eat everything on your plate. You don't waste food. You don't throw stuff away, and you don't waste food.
Yeah.
Did we talk about the challenges you're facing as you're trying to move forward with this project?
Yeah. I mean, filmmaking is not how I earn my money. I have a day job. I have a family. I have a young toddler. And so, and filmmaking takes you, I mean, the writing and editing are at home, but filmmaking actually takes you outside of your home. So one of the big challenges is just kind of balancing the art of trying to get these projects made, and, keeping food on the table and keeping video games in the Switch, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, we're halfway. Question 4. All right, messages or themes that you have found that you like to convey in your films, and do you know why? Have any idea why those themes are important to you?
Who can say why, but I generally like to explore people who live on the margins or are unconventional place. Like trailers, I'm fascinated by trailers. Fascinated by people just trying to make do. And so I'm attracted to stories and filmmakers who explore those stories like that. I don't know why. I come from a middle class, working class background. We didn't want for much, but I am fascinated by those stories.
Well, you had two, blue collar parents. Your father was
worked at Kellogg's, yeah, and my mother's a teacher, yeah.
Yes, that's
okay. I guess I'm working class.
Very, very, very solid and commendable, blue collar jobs.
Yeah.
And there's going back to honesty. That's sort of an honest, what they call an honest living. You're working. You're making enough to get by, and you put in hard work to get that, and you don't have a lot of room for affluence or waste. Going back to how maybe this ties into the thrifting element, living lean and having to live wisely and without opulence.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've been attracted to, and I love stories about that. So, yeah.
Can you think of some other works of art that you have consumed that sort of seem to like to touch on those themes or that material?
Yeah, I mean, I love so many films. A film I love is Wendy and Lucy is a movie that I like a lot. A movie I like to reference, and it's just about a young girl with not a lot of money just making the trek to, I believe, through Oregon to just find work, and just her. And what I really like about the movie is that the amount of money that kind of sets her back is not millions of dollars. There's these movies where it's like, we got to get this million, we got to get this several thousand, and it's like $50 is what wrecks her in this movie, and I who have been wrecked by $50.
Yeah, that's relatable. I was thinking the same thing. It's relatable content.
Yeah, and that's something about seeing a movie where the stakes were high for the individual, but in the grand scheme of the world, don't seem very high, like $50. Something kind of moved me, and so I don't know. I'm kind of drawn to that. We have made a movie together, you and I, Downer, and I think just about a guy who's down on his luck, and the amount of money is like trivial.
Yeah. I think of the scene where with the voicemails, which is probably one of my favorite scenes of that.
No, it's great. The audio's great. Yeah.
The overlay and the weaving of the calls about debts, and you see it accumulating as the cans of beer accumulate in front of him at the same time.
Yeah.
And troubles just pile up. Very cool. Question 5: how do you balance the technical aspects of making films with your vision as an artist?
Got you. Well, so my day job is I'm the video manager at Lens Rentals. So that affords me access to top of the line gear, but more importantly, it affords me like the expertise of coworkers, many of whom are filmmakers, cinematographers, photographers, and projects I've worked with them on. Natives, which is my latest. My AC was from Lens Rentals and a couple of other people. So that helps having access to that gear. And so really I can focus, not that it's easy, but I can kind of focus on the artistic merit to not worry about whether I'll be able to afford this camera or this lens. So that really kind of helps. Because a lot of time, art is also about limitations, right?
Yeah.
And while limitations are great, and I love a limitation, we've done the 48-hour film fest and film fest.
I was thinking about deadlines. Yeah.
Deadlines and limitations actually kind of spur me and us and a lot of artists. But sometimes they can be a headache. So it's nice to be able to have access to gear and to kind of like, you want to get that shot, you got access to this drone. Let's do it.
And Downer, the least. We got the most acclaim from that. Granted that it wasn't anything huge, but it turned the most heads, and we were working with the least. All we had was a digital camera.
Yeah. A digital stills camera.
Yeah.
Until the end. Yeah.
Like the last day of shooting, we finally got enough money together for an SD handheld camera. But it was we had to do storytelling with a very limited amount of tools in the toolbox, but we're still able to make something that was cool.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, Downer, a lot of acclaim. One of my most favorite things I've done, and it's because when you do have those limitations, you have to find a creative solution. Now you can't.
You have to think differently. Yeah, you can't take the conventional route, and a lot of times, not being conventional is what helps get people's attention.
Yeah. Which is why a movie, $100 million movie, can be boring and just really toe the line because you have the money to do that, and these little $1.4 million
paint by the numbers
films, paint by the numbers, and but if you can't afford paint.
What you going to use?
Yeah, exactly. And so some interesting stories can come out of that.
Absolutely. Question 6: any particular filmmakers? I know a few answers to this, but I'm still interested to hear what you say. Particular filmmakers or films that have influenced your work, and how, or what particular elements or moments in those films?
Well, I mentioned Wendy and Lucy, which is Kelly Reichardt film, and that's kind of something. She's like a filmmaker I've gotten into, over the last several years. But when I first started out, what got me into filmmaking was probably Kevin Smith with Mallrats.
And I love Mallrats. That was one of my favorites.
It was one of my favorite movies. I had that and Clerks all on DVD. His whole set, the whole View Askew universe. But that kind of like set me on a path to like, okay, I'm going to study filmmaking because I want to make movies. That was 20 something years ago, and my tastes, I feel, have matured. But and so the filmmakers I'm looking at now, the movies I enjoy now, are probably quieter and probably have better like cinematography and dialogue. And so Kelly Reichardt is one. God, it's always hard to come up with a list until afterwards. But Lynn Ramsey is a filmmaker I love. A lot of great women filmmakers are working today, and just what they do is poetry in cinema. Like the visuals kind of like really tell the story as opposed to cracking wise or whatever.
You're not gonna. Did you mention John Cassavetes? Did I miss that?
I thought about mentioning him earlier when we were talking about just John Cassavetes was. So there was Kevin Smith, and that was my probably favorite filmmaker until, I don't know, 2000 or 2001. And then I discovered John Cassavetes, who I just fell hard for. Killing of a Chinese Bookie. I rented it might have been a cassette, but from Blockbuster, and it just kind of blew me away. And then I went down the line on all of his filmmakers. And something about the rawness of his films. Husbands is a movie I really like, just the kind of rawness of his filmmaking. And John Cassavetes does not care about cinematography. He doesn't care about all this. He just cares about like raw, like emotion and visual. So he's probably another one of my favorites. And then probably like Mike Lee, another filmmaker I like, similar to just kind of like bringing out emotion out of the story. So, yeah.
Cool.
And these are filmmakers that don't necessarily care about narrative, but just care about like feeling. And so, there's a lot of ways to tell a story or to make a film. And, they're all different, but can be equally great.
Speaking of making a film, we're going to wrap things up with question 7. It's today. It's April 22nd, 2023. There's a kid out there who's making the decision for the first time to try to tell a story through filmmaking. What would be, let's say, three tips that you would give a kid who wanted to start today?
I would say get with some friends, find a group. It's hard to make movies by yourself. You can do it. There are filmmakers who, if you're a documentary filmmaker, but I'd say find your team. And maybe you're not the director on every project, maybe you're not the writer on every project, but you definitely want to invest in others and so that people invest in you. I would say as a part of that, just do it. Just get out there and do it. Don't talk about it. Don't, write a 5-minute short and just get out there and do it, and then iterate. Iteration, I think, is one of the most important things you can do is fail, or learn. And each kind of poor project you do, you learn something from that. And you can get better. And third thing, sound. Sound is always taken for granted in movies. Good sound is a treasure.
Man, that helps a lot.
Yeah, even if your movie looks like crap, you can say, "Well, that was on purpose." This story is best told with 720p, 4:3. It's difficult to see. There's some great movies like that. But if your sound is poor, people can't get past that and take it seriously.
Yeah, you're right.
So I would invest in sound.
I recorded something on my phone last week, and the visuals were okay, but the sound was just so bad. I was like, I did not like the idea of. That's why I really enjoy voiceover stuff, because you can control and optimize the sound, and when you're in the field, sound can really be. The first thing we talked about when we started this, I was like, "You're outside, man. There's too much noise going on in the background." Let's see. Did we get 3 elements of advice? Start the tribe. Sound is important. Do you remember what the third one was?
Sound. Iterate.
Oh, reiteration. All 3 excellent bits of advice. we are at the end of my first 7 Qs. You are the man. Thank you very much for being a guest. Stick around, and I'll get some decompress with you, but I'm going to end this live stream.
Sure.
Thank you to anybody who tuned in and anybody who watches this in the future. Until next time, Dab News 7 Qs. All right. Okay.